recording live video. Yes, this bonnet is on. Bonnet. Fabulous lighting. Ooh, this is bright. This is bright. It's bright in here today. Yeah, because it's finally sunny. Do we see guitars? Do we care? I don't know. We're going to adjust things. Ooh, like so close. Hi! Hey, this looks good. Here, let me get comfy. Let me just get really comfy. This is like, well, isn't that nice? That's lovely. And I have water. Do I have water? I don't have enough light. I need more light. Yes. Yes. Oh, it's beautiful. I can see you. I can see you. Hi. I see you're all signing in. This is awesome. You know, one more week of this and that'll be straight vodka. But no, I can make it because we have Little House in the Prairie. Hi, it's Alison. I'm in the living room again. Yes, those are mouse ears behind my head on the shelf. Those are silver mouse ears because they are from Paris. Prairie, France. Paris, France. As Mrs. Olson would say, when I went, I've been to Disneyland in Paris a couple times, but those are from when I first went. It was the 15th anniversary, so they had fancy silver ears. And yes, I got them. So, and you've seen there's guitars. Show the guitar. Ooh, today's I don't remember what kind it is. My husband Bob. Yes, my husband Bob, who is in the fabulous band Catahoula, indeed plays guitar. And so, yes, you will often see many fine, lovely guitars popping up in the video here, along with all the other fun things of them. So, how's everybody doing? Everybody doing good? Doing good? We are doing more Little House in the Prairie. Now, all the chapters were named like something Prairie, like Camp on the Prairie, Prairie Day, High Prairie, Crossing the Creek, and the Little House in the Prairie. And today is the Wolf Pack. The Wolf Pack, yes, because there's wolves. We're going to get eaten by wolves. Well, maybe we won't get eaten by wolves. It'll be a close call. Because they're in the middle of nowhere in Kansas. And they're not even legally supposed to be there. Because they got told, oh yeah, it's totally fine, but it was completely on Indian land that the government hadn't actually signed off on with the Indians. So, oopsies. And there's wolves and all kinds of wild animals, and they're just constantly, always almost freezing to death. Oh, and yesterday, Pa dropped a log on Mom's foot. And her foot was sprained. It's purple and black, and so she could be getting gangrene any moment. Yay! So it's scary, and today's Wolfpack. All in one day, because, Mr. Edwards, they've been building stuff. All in one day, Paul and Mr. Edwards built the stable for Pet and Patty. Good. They even put the roof on, working so late that Ma had to keep supper waiting for them. There was no stable door, but in the moonlight, Pa drove 2 stout posts well into the ground, one on either side of the doorway. I'm going to have some backlight, because I can, that's even better, and now I can see the book. Yeah. Wow. So the stout posts well into the ground, one at a time on either side of the doorway. He put Pet and Patty inside the stable, and then he laid small split logs, one above the other, across the door space. The posts held them, and they made a solid wall. So they made kind of like a little fencey thing. I mean, it's good. The wolves won't walk through it or anything. Now, said Pa, let those wolves howl. I'll sleep tonight. In the morning, when he lifted the split logs from behind the posts, Laura was amazed. Beside Pet, stood a long-legged, long-eared, wobbly little colt. The horsey had a baby. Did you know the horse was pregnant? I didn't know the horse was pregnant. Did you know? Did she say the horse was pregnant? No idea. Miraculously, the horse, with no discussion of it, just gave birth to a baby horsey. Cool. When Laura ran toward it, gentle Pet laid back her ears and snapped her teeth at Laura. Arr! Get away from my baby. Arr! Keep back, Laura, Pa said sharply. He said to Pet, now, Pet, you know we won't hurt your little colt. Pet answered him with a soft whinny. She would let Pa stroke her colt, but she would not let Laura or Mary come near it. When they even peeked at it through the cracks in the stable wall, Pet rolled the whites of her eyes at them and showed her teeth. Arrgh! They had never seen a colt with ears so long. Pa said it was a little mule, but Laura said it looked like a jackrabbit. So they named the little colt Bunny. Bunny, wait, that sounds familiar. Isn't that the little horsey in the show? We used that story. Bunny, that's the horsey that I repossessed on Christmas and was so mean to that it threw me. Bunny, that's Bunny the horsey. It is Bunny the horsey, who is clearly some kind of mixed breed there. Something about mules getting in the stable. When Pat was on the picket line with Bunny frisking around her and wondering at the big world, Laura must watch baby Carrie carefully. If anyone but Pa came near Bunny, Pet squealed with rage and dashed to bite the little girl. Horses are very protective. Pa spent all his time with the horses. He spent so much time with the horses that they accepted him. But no, they weren't letting nobody else in. Early that Sunday afternoon, Pa rode Patty away across the prairie to see what he should see. There was plenty of meat in the house, so he did not take the gun. Baby horse, yay, colt. He rode away through the tall grass along the rim of the creek bluffs. Birds flew up before him and circled and sank into the grasses. Pa was looking down at the creek bottoms as he rode. Perhaps he was watching deer browsing there. Then Patty broke into a gallop, and swiftly she and Pa grew smaller. Soon there was only waving grass where they had been. Don't know. Late that afternoon, Pa had not come home. Da-da-da-da. Ma stirred the coals of the fire and laid chips on them and began to get supper. Mary was in the house minding the baby, and Laura asked Ma, "What's the matter with Jack?" Because, when Jack the dog starts getting weird, that's never good. Oh, look, yes, it's a little brighter. It's much, a little better. It's a little tilt that towards me. Oh, yes, it's much better. Jack's being weird. Jack was walking up and down, looking worried. He wrinkled his nose at the wind, and the hair rose up on his neck and lay down, and then rose up again. Pet's hoof suddenly thudded. She ran around the circle of her picket rope and stood still, wickering a low wicker. A low wicker, so that's not... Bunny came close to her. "What's the matter, Jack?" Ma asked. He looked up at her, but he couldn't say anything. No, because he was a dog. Okay. Ma gazed around the whole circle of earth and sky. She could not see anything unusual. Ooh. "Likely it isn't anything, Laura," she said. She raked coals around the coffee pot and the spider and onto the top of the bake oven. The prairie hen sizzled in the spider. More prairie hen, yum. Prairie hen sizzled in the spider, and the corn cakes began to smell good. But all the time Ma kept glancing at the prairie all around. Jack walked about restlessly, and Pet did not graze. She faced the northwest where Pa had gone and kept her colt close beside her. All the animals, they know something's wrong. Where's Pa? All at once, Patty came running across the prairie. She was stretched out running with all her might, and Pa was leaning almost flat on her neck. She ran right past the stable before Pa could stop her. He stopped her so hard that she almost sat down. She was trembling all over, and her black coat was streaked with sweat and foam. Pa swung off her. He was breathing hard, too. "What is the matter, Charles?" Ma asked him. Pa was looking toward the creek, so Ma and Laura looked at it, too, but they could see only the space above the bottomlands with a few treetops in it and distant tops of the earthen bluffs under the high prairie's grasses. "What is it?" Ma asked again. "Why did you ride Patty like that?" Pa breathed a long breath. "I was afraid the wolves would beat me here, but I see everything's all right." "Wolves!" she cried. "What wolves?" The wolves. "Everything's all right, Caroline," said Pa. "Let a fellow get his breath." When he had gotten some breath, he said, "I didn't ride Patty like that. It was all I could do to hold her at all. 50 wolves. Caroline, the biggest wolves I ever saw. I wouldn't go through such a thing again, not for a mint of money." A shadow came over the prairie just then because the sun had gone down, and Pa said, "I'll tell you about it later." "We'll eat supper in the house," said Ma. Yeah, good call. "No need of that," he told her. "Jack will give us warning in plenty of time." Boy, that dog must be tough. They must really believe in that dog, because they're just like, "It's cool, Jack will hold off 50 wolves." He brought Pat and her colt from the picket line. He didn't take them and Patty to drink from the creek as he usually did. He gave them the water in Ma's wash tub, which was standing full, ready for the washing next morning. He rubbed down Patty's sweaty sides and legs and put her in the barn with Pet and Bunny. Supper was ready. The campfire made a circle of light in the dark. Laura and Mary stayed close to the fire and kept baby Carrie with them. They could feel the dark all around them, and they kept looking behind them at the place where the dark mixed with the edge of the firelight. Shadows moved there as if they were alive. Jack sat on his haunches beside Laura. The edges of his ears were lifted, listening to the dark. Now and then he walked a little way into it. He walked all around the campfire and came back to sit beside Laura. The hair lay flat on his thick neck, and he did not growl. His teeth showed a little, but that was because he was a bulldog. I guess Jack was... Laura and Mary ate their corn. Bulldog, wait, bulldog. Is that bulldog? Poor little bulldog. Laura and Mary ate their corn cakes and the prairie hen's drumsticks, and they listened to Pa while he told Ma about the wolves. He had found some more neighbors. How does he do it? How does he find people? There's nobody out there. There's nothing. And yet Pa pops out and like, boom, he totally finds neighbors like everywhere. He's like, oh, look, I found this guy in the woods. Found this guy selling horses. I just found Mr. Edwards just wandering around the forest. How does he do it? Pa is amazing. He finds all these people. More neighbors. Settlers were coming in and settling along both sides of the creek. Now remember, he left the big woods because, oh my God, he saw like a single other human being over a few days. So Pa may have to move because it's already people. Less than 3 miles away, in a hollow on the high prairie, a man and his wife were building a house. Their name was Scott, and Pa said they were nice folks. 6 miles beyond them, 2 bachelors were living in one house. They had taken 2 farms and built the house on the line between them. One man's bunk was against one wall of the house, and the other man's bunk was against the other wall. So each man slept on his own farm, although they were in the same house, and the house was only 8 feet wide. Okay. Bachelors. They cooked and ate together in the middle of the house. It was friendly of them. Pa had not said anything about the wolves yet. Laura wished he would, but she knew that she must not interrupt when Pa was talking. He said that these bachelors did not know that anyone else was in the country. They had seen nobody but Indians. So they were glad to see Pa, and he stayed there longer than he'd meant to. They were like partying. You know, he's like, hi, I'm stuck with the wife and kids. You guys got like some whiskey, a deck of cards. Who knows? But he finally met up with some dudes. Then he rode on, and from a little rise in the prairie, he saw a white speck down in the creek bottoms. He thought it was a covered wagon, and it was. When he came to it, he found a man and his wife and 5 children. They had come from Iowa, and they had camped in the bottoms because one of their horses was sick. Oh. The horse was better now, but the bad night air so near the creek had given them fever and ague. That's fever and apostrophe ague. One of our historians, is Sarah on the line? One of our historian friends will know that explains this is like back in the day, they had different names for illnesses, some of which were same as stuff we have now, and some were weird, like diseases we didn't even have anymore. Like, it's better. So I don't know, fever and ague, was that flu? Was that the coronavirus of its day? Had fever? Was it a different thing? It may have been a weird infection that was going around. It may have been the scarlet fever. Malaria! Sarah, thank you! It was malaria. Fever and ague is what they called malaria. And they're talking about bad night air, which of course doesn't actually cause malaria. But you know how you catch malaria off of mosquitoes. And down the creek there would have been shallows where, mosquitoes lay eggs. So indeed, these guys, this family was catching malaria. So on top of everything else that you had to contend with out in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, like starvation, prairie fire, wolves, etc., you can get malaria and die. Because, like, it's not like there was a cure or anything. What is going on with the camera? What am I like all with this weird look? You know what this is? This is, internet is wonky. Because everyone in the world is on the internet. So every now and then it goes, But there we are. We're still there. And the phone's ringing and I'm not getting it. Because everyone knows I'm talking to you. Wow. So fever and ague. They had malaria. The man and his wife and the 3 older children were too sick to stand up. Yeah, no kidding. The little boy and girl, no bigger than Mary and Laura, were taking care of them. Aww. So Pa did what he could for them. And then he rode back to tell the bachelors about them. Gotta warn the two guys with the bunk bed thing going on there. One of them rode right away to fetch that family up on the high prairie where they would soon get well in the good air. Well, they wouldn't really necessarily get well in the good air. It would be good that they'd be around people who could bring them food and take care of them, and probably get them away from the swampy place with the mosquitoes. That's really about it. That's all they could really do for them now. One thing had led to another. What is that? One thing had led to another until Pa was starting home later than he had meant. I don't know. He took a shortcut across the prairie, and as he was loping along on Patty, suddenly, out of a little draw, oh no, came a pack of wolves. Ah! They were all around Pa in a moment. It was a big pack, Pa said. All of 50 wolves. And the biggest wolves I ever saw in my life must be what they call buffalo wolves. I did not know there was such a thing as buffalo wolves. Buffalo wolves. Their leader's a big gray brute that stands 3 feet at the shoulder if an inch. I tell you, my hair stood straight on end. And you didn't have your gun, said Ma. I thought of that, but my gun would have been no use if I'd had it. You can't fight 50 wolves with one gun. He has a point. What did you do? Ma asked. Nothing, said Pa. Patty tried to run. I never wanted anything worse, and I wanted to get away from there. But I knew if Patty even started, those wolves would be on us in a minute, pulling us down. So I held Patty to a walk. And he was right. He knew he'd initially got to kind of back slowly away. You can't just bolt. Look at that. It's like, woo, it's the Sci-Fi Channel. Okay, I will hold still. Goodness, Charles, Ma said under her breath. Yes, I wouldn't want to go through such a thing again for any money, Caroline. I never saw such wolves. One big fellow trotted along right by my stirrup. I could have kicked him in the ribs. They didn't pay any attention to me at all. They must have just made a kill and eaten all they could. I tell you, Caroline, these wolves just closed in around Patty and me and trotted along with us in broad daylight. For all the world like a pack of dogs going along with a horse. They were all around us, trotting along and jumping and playing and snapping at each other, just like dogs. Okay, well, he's really lucky, because had they been hungry and turned on him, I mean, that's to be terrifying. I mean, yeah, but apparently they were just hanging out. It was just wolves hanging out, and so, yikes, okay. Goodness, Charles, Ma said again. Laura's heart was thumping fast, and her mouth and her eyes were wide open, staring at Pa. Patty was shaking all over and fighting the bit, said Pa. Sweat ran off her. She was so scared. I was sweating too. But I held her down to a walk, and we went walking along among those wolves. They came right along with us, 1/4 of a mile or more. That big fellow trotted by my stirrup as if he was there to stay. And yes, there's pictures. Brr. Okay, that's like terrifying. Just like that. Hi, giant wolf. He could have bitten his foot off. He could just bitten his foot off, like right there and then. Terrifying. Then we came to the head of a draw of the creek. Head of a draw running down into the creek bottoms. The big gray leader went down in it, and all the rest of the pack trotted down into it behind him. As soon as the last one was in the draw, I let Patty go. Luckily, the wolves were thirsty, and they went to the creek. So, whew, I'm telling you. She headed straight for home across the prairie, and she couldn't have run faster if I'd been cutting into her with a rawhide whip. I'm very glad he wasn't. Yikes, that's scary. I was scared the whole way. Yeah, I thought the wolves might be coming this way, and they might be making better time than I was. I was glad you had the gun, Caroline, and glad the house is built. I knew you could keep the wolves out of the house with the gun, but Pet and the colt were outside. Remember, he hasn't built her a door yet. It's still just a blanket hanging across. So they would have been in the house, like with the gun, trying to keep the wolves from just walking in through the open door with the blanket. They would die, but there we go. You need not have worried, Charles, Ma said. I guess I would manage to save our horses. She's pretty darn brave. I was not fully reasonable at the time, said Bob. I know you would save the horses, Caroline. Those wolves wouldn't bother you anyway. If they had been hungry, I wouldn't be here to... Little pitchers have big ears, Ma said. She meant that he must not frighten Mary and Laura. Well, all's well that ends well, Pa replied. And those wolves are miles from here by now. He's done this before. Remember when they almost all drowned in the river, and he almost drowned, and they almost lost the wagon and everything, were almost killed? And he said, all's well that ends well. Yeah, these people are really optimistic. Charles just doesn't care. He's like, nah, So indeed, all's well that ends well. What made them act like that, Laura asked. I don't know, Laura, he said. I guess they had just eaten all they could hold, and they were on their way to the creek to get a drink. Or perhaps they were playing on the prairie and not paying any attention to anything but their play, like little girls do sometimes. Perhaps they saw I didn't have my gun and couldn't do them any harm. Or perhaps they had never seen a man before and didn't know that men can do them any harm. So they didn't think about me at all. It was totally wild. And it is actually possible that he met wolves that had never seen a human being. It was that wild out there. Pet and Patty were restlessly walking around and around inside the barn. Jack walked around the campfire. When he stood still to smell the air and listen, the hair lifted on his neck. Bedtime for little girls, Ma said cheerfully. Not even baby Carrie was sleepy yet. Baby Carrie's always asleep. But Ma took them all into the house. She told Mary and Laura to go to bed, and she put baby Carrie's little nightgown on and laid her in the big bed. Then she went outdoors to do the dishes. Laura wanted Pa and Ma in the house. They seemed so far away outside. Mary and Laura were good and lay still, but Carrie sat up and played by herself in the dark. In the dark, Pa's arm came from behind the quilt in the doorway and quietly took away his gun. They're like snoozing away, like in Pa's hand. Excuse me, I'll be taking my gun now, yeah. Yikes! Out by the campfire, the tin plates rattled. Then a knife scraped the spider. Ma and Pa were talking together, and Laura smelled tobacco smoke. The house was safe, but it did not feel safe because Pa's gun was not over the door, and there was no door. There was only the quilt. After a long time, Ma lifted the quilt. Baby Carrie was asleep then. Ma and Pa came in very quietly and very quietly went to bed. Jack lay across the doorway, but his chin was not on his paws. His head was up, listening. Ma breathed softly, Pa breathed heavily, and Mary was asleep. But Laura strained her eyes in the dark to watch Jack. She could not tell whether the hair was standing up on his neck. Suddenly she was sitting straight up in bed. She had been asleep. The dark was gone. Moonlight streamed through the window hole, and streaks of moonlight came through every crack in that wall. Pa stood black in the moonlight at the window. He had his gun. Right in Laura's ear, a wolf howled. Arrgh! She scringed away from the wall. That's like scurry and cringe at the same time. I just scringed away from the wall. The wolf was on the other side of it. Laura was too scared to make a sound. The cold was not in her backbone only, it was all through her. Mary pulled the quilt over her head. Jack growled and showed his teeth at the quilt in the doorway. Arrgh. Be still, Jack, Pa said. Terrible howls curled all around inside the house, and Laura rose out of bed. She wanted to go to Pa, but she knew better than to bother him now. He turned his head and saw her standing in her nightgown. Want to see them, Laura? He asked softly. Right. Ma would have been like, oh my God, get back in the bed. Charles is like, yeah, the wolves. Do I see the wolves? It's like, ah! He's like totally like, here, come see the wolves. Laura couldn't say anything, but she nodded and patted across the ground to him. He stood his gun against the wall and lifted her up to the window hole. There in the moonlight sat half a circle of wolves. They sat on their haunches and looked at Laura in the window, and she looked at them. She had never seen such big wolves. The biggest one was taller than Laura. He was taller even than Mary. He sat in the middle, exactly opposite Laura. Everything about him was big. His pointed ears and his pointed mouth with the tongue hanging out, and his strong shoulders and legs, and his two paws side by side, and his tail curled around his squatting haunch. His coat was shaggy gray, and his eyes were glittering green. Here are a bunch of wolves hanging out, with tongues hanging out of their mouths, just sitting there, and they're huge. Ma was halfway to TOY. Yeah, Ma was like, I gotta freaking out by now. Oh, Laura clutched her toes into a crack of the wall, and she folded her arms on the window slab, and she looked at that wolf. But she did not put her head through the empty window space into the outdoors, where all those wolves sat so near her, shifting their paws and licking their chops. Pa stood firm against her back and kept his arm tight around her middle. He's awful big, Laura whispered. Yes, and see how his coat shines, Pa whispered into her hair. So Pa's like, yes, he's been eating Alpo. He has a shiny coat. Look how healthy the wolf is. Pa's weird. The moonlight made little glitters in the edges of the shaggy fur all around the big wolf. They are in a ring clear around the house, Pa whispered. That's not good. Laura pattered beside him to the other window. He leaned his gun against the wall and lifted her up. There, sure enough, was the other half of the circle of wolves. All their eyes glittered green in the shadow of the house. Laura could hear their breathing. When they saw Pa and Laura looking out, the middle of the circle moved back a little way. They said, look, there's people. That's not good. Pa, Pet, and Patty were squealing and running inside the barn. Their hoofs pounded the ground and crashed against the walls. After a moment, Pa went back to the other window, and Laura went too. They were just in time to see the big wolf lift his nose till it pointed straight at the sky. His mouth opened, and a long howl rose toward the moon. Ah-roo! I'm totally freaking out. Then all around the house, the circle of wolves pointed their noses toward the sky and answered him. Their howls shuddered through the house and filled the moonlight and quavered away across the vast silence of the prairie. Arr! 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 Yikes! Now go back to bed, little half-pint, Pa said. Go to sleep. Jack and I will take care of you all. Now seriously, could you go back to sleep? After you just saw a giant pack of wolves surround your house and all start going, ow, and like answering each other, I would freak out. I wouldn't be sleeping. I would be out of my mind. Oh, I scared someone's dog. That's good. I frightened someone's dog when I howled, but I'm scared. So Laura went back to bed, but for a long time she did not sleep. No kidding. She lay and listened to the breathing of the wolves on the other side of the log wall. She heard the scratch of their claws on the ground and the snuffling of a nose at a crack. They were coming right up to the house. Each one. She heard the big gray leader howl again and all the others answering him. Arr! But Pa was walking quietly from one window hole to the other, and Jack did not stop pacing up and down before the quilt that hung in the doorway. The wolves might howl, but they could not get in while Pa and Jack were there. So at last, Laura fell asleep. You know, he can only shoot one bullet at a time. He's got to, take out the big wolf if they attack. If they charge, he's got to, nail the big wolf first, and then hope he can reload in time to stop the other 49, who might be at least distracted. Yeah, I would be totally freaked out. Kitty! Did you get scared by wolves? Kitty, stop doing things. Oh, the cat. Morticia, come here. No, you're not going to come. The cat will not. She's a cat. She doesn't do anything I tell her. Well, I think they need doors on that house. Do you think they need doors on that house? 2 stout doors. I seriously think that they need doors on this house. And apparently, someone finally figured out that indeed they need doors on this house. I need more light. I'm getting creeped out by all the wolves. I'm scared. So, yeah, that's better. Ooh. Okay. 2 stout doors. Laura felt a soft warmth on her face and opened her eyes into the morning sunshine. Mary was talking to Ma by the campfire. Laura ran outdoors, all bare inside her nightgown. There were no wolves to be seen, only their tracks were thick around the house and stable. Pa came whistling up the creek road. He put his gun on its pegs and led Pet and Patty to the creek to drink as usual. He had followed the wolf tracks so far that he knew they were far away now, following a herd of deer. Whew, oh, good. The Mustangs shied at the wolves' tracks and pricked their ears nervously, because they knew Kitty. Hey. Come here. Come here. There. She's terrible. She's like, don't eat thread. No, leave that alone. Leave stuff alone. She wants to like come over here and play. You want to come and play? Come play. You can come play here. Come on, come over here. She's just the worst. She's so bad. Ooh, see, the horses, they knew they could smell the wolves in the track, so they were totally freaked out. And Pet kept the colt close at her side, but they went willingly with Paw, who knew there was nothing to fear. Breakfast was ready. Oh, thank goodness. When Paw came back from the creek, they all sat by the fire and ate fried mush and prairie chicken hash. Well, leftovers. Paw said he would make a door that very day. Yeah, think? He wanted more than a quilt between them and the wolves next time. Yeah, and if I were Ma, I'd be like, door, make door now. Now we need door. I have no more nails, but I'll not keep on waiting till I can make a trip to Independence, he said. A man doesn't need nails to build a house or make a door. Fancy. After breakfast, he hitched up Pet and Patty, and taking his axe, he went to get timber for the door. Laura helped wash the dishes and make the beds, but that day, Mary minded the baby. Laura helped Paul make the door. Mary watched, but Laura handed him his tools. Yeah, she gets to help Paul. With the saw, he sawed logs the right length for a door. He sawed shorter lengths for the cross pieces. Then with the axe, he split the logs into slabs and smoothed them nicely, making a good door. He laid the long slabs together in the ground and placed the shorter slabs across them. Then with the auger, that's the thing, you bore holes with an auger. That's still used today. People have augers. He bored holes through the cross pieces into the long slabs. Into every hole, he drove a wooden peg that fitted tightly. So yes, he just did it with pegs. That made the door. It was a good oak door, solid and strong. For the hinges, he cut 3 long straps. I guess wood or leather, probably leather. One hinge was to be near the top of the door, one near the bottom, and one in the middle. He fastened them first to the door in this way. He laid a little piece of wood on the door and bored a hole through it into the door. Oh, see, these are wooden straps. This is like thin wood, actually, yeah. And bored a hole through into the door. Then he doubled one end of a strap around the little piece of wood, and with his knife cut round holes through the strap. It's very clever. He laid the little piece of wood on the door again, with the strap doubled around it, and all the holes making one hole. Then Laura gave him a peg and a hammer, and he drove the peg into the hole. The peg went through the strap and the little piece of wood, and through the strap again and into the door. That held the strap so that it couldn't get loose. See, there, that's what he's doing. See, there he is. There, straps, door, hinges, making hinges. I told you a fellow doesn't need nails, Pa said. Harumph. When he had fastened the 3 hinges to the door, he set the door in the doorway. It fitted. He pegged strips of wood to the old slabs on either side of the doorway to keep the door from swinging outward. He set the door in place again, and Laura stood against it to hold it there while Pa fastened the hinges to the door frame. See, that's what she's doing there. She's holding the door steady while he gets it actually on there. Very, very clever. But before he did this, he had made the latch on the door because, of course, there must be some way to keep a door shut. So he's not only building the door, he's building a lock, a bar, Katie bar the door, as they used to say. This was the way he made the latch. First, he hewed a short, thick piece of oak. From one side of this in the middle, he cut a deep, wide notch. He pegged this stick to the inside of the door, up and down, and near the edge. He put the notch side against the door, so that the notch made a little slot. Then he hewed and whittled a longer, smaller stick. This stick was small enough to slip easily through the slot. He slid one end of it through the slot, and he pegged the other end to the door. But he did not peg it tightly. The peg was solid and firm in the door, but the hole in the stick was larger than the peg. The only thing that held the stick on the door was the slot. Are you following any of that? Because I'm totally having trouble. I'm hoping there's pictures of the door slot thing. The stick was the latch. Now it's making sense. It turned easily on the peg. So just make the doorknob a latch. And the loose end moved up and down in the slot. And the loose end of it was long enough to go through the slot and across the crack between the door and the wall, and to lie against the wall when the door was shut. In other words, click. You're getting the gist here. When Pa and Laura had hung the door in the doorway, and Pa marked the spot on the wall where the end of the latch came, over that spot, he pegged to the wall a stout piece of oak. This piece of oak was cut out at the top so the latch could drop between it and the wall. Now, Laura pushed the door shut, and while she pushed, she lifted the end of the latch as high as it would go in the slot. Then she let it fall into its place behind the stout piece of oak. That held that latch against the wall, and the up and down strip held the latch in its slot against the door. Nobody could break in without breaking the strong latch in two. Yeah! But there must be a way to lift the latch from the outside. Right, because say the kids lock the door and then, like, the house is on fire or something, and then Pa has to get... But he thought of that. How do you get in when you've locked the house up? So he made a latch string. This is also called being able to open the door from the outside. He cut it from a long strip of good leather. This is where the leather strappy things on the door come in. He tied one end of the latch between the peg and the slot. Above the latch, he bored a small hole through the door and pushed the end of the latch string through the hole. Laura stood outside, and when the end of the latch string came through the hole, she took hold of it and pulled. She could pull it hard enough to lift the latch and let herself in. Latchkey child, there you go. The door was finished. It was strong and solid, made of thick oak with oak slabs across it, all pegged together with good stout pegs. The latch string was out. If you wanted to come in, you pulled the latch string. But if you were inside, you wanted to keep anyone out. Then you pulled the latch string in through its hole, and nobody could get in. There was no doorknob on that door, and no keyhole, and no key. But it was a good door. I call that a good day's work, said Pa, and I had a fine little helper. He hugged the top of Laura's head with his hand. He squeezed her little head. Then he gathered up his tools and put them away, whistling, and he went to take Pet and Patty from their picket lines to water. The sun was setting, the breeze was cooler, and supper cooking on the fire made the best supper smells that Laura had ever smelled. There was salt pork for supper. Yay, salt! Always with salt, these people. What? Am I light? Ooh, it's spooky. I'm haunted. Oh, wait, there. No, it's good. Okay, good. It's good. There was salt pork for supper. It was the last of the salt pork. Oh, no. So next day, Paul went hunting. But the day after that, he and Laura made the barn door. Closing the barn door after the horses stole it. So luckily, the horse has not been stolen yet, so I'm going to make a barn door. It was exactly like the house door, except it had no latch, because the horses, Pet and Patty did not understand door latches and would not pull a latch string in at night. Horses cannot operate a door lock and a latch string. So, yes, they didn't build that feature in. Horses, lock doors. Oh, very good. So instead of a latch, though, he made a hole through the door and he put a chain through it. So it set a lock for the humans. At night, he would pull an end of the chain through a crack between the logs in the stable wall and would padlock the two ends of the chain together. Then nobody could get into that stable. Now, they're going on and on about how awesome it is that they're so safe because they're not around any people. Yet, they're having to build doors with locks on them. They're having to padlock the barn to protect the horses because there are people who would steal stuff, and they're talking about stealing and getting eaten by wolves and attacked by animals, and then, Indians, and we don't know. Yikes. So, it's not really that secure, I'm going to go live out in Kansas with no people. I don't know, man. Now we're all snug, said Pa. When neighbors began to come into a country, it was best to lock up your horses at night, because where there are deer, there will be wolves. And where there are horses, there will be horse thieves. Oh, but it's true. What has he got? 3 neighbors? He's got Mr. Edwards, the Scots, the guy with the 5 kids, malaria, and the 2 bachelors. And he's already having to buy a padlock because there's 20 people. Oh, dearie me. Where there are deer, there will be wolves. When there's horses, there will be horse thieves. That night at supper, Pa said to Ma, "Now, Caroline, as soon as we get Edward's house up, I'm going to build you a fireplace so you can do your cooking in the house out of the wind and storms." And wolves. It seems like I never did see a place with so much sunshine, but I suppose it's bound to rain sometimes. Yes, Charles, Ma said. Good weather never lasts forever on this earth. No kidding, because eventually it's going to snow, not to mention wolves and Indians and everything else, and malaria. I mean, it's getting great. But this is great, finally. Okay, I'm finally ready to, I can sleep, that these people have a door. Because they were freaking me out with all that they were living there with no door. And the next thing is fire on the hearth. So she's totally getting a fireplace because they're gonna get. And then there's some hanging out and waiting in the streams and bugs. And she gets fireplace, and then she gets a roof and a floor. It's taking them like hundreds of pages to finish this thing, but she does get a roof and a floor before this is over, for a couple chapters. So that'll be cool. Oh, well, Ma has a fireplace. I have a fireplace. I don't really use it that much because, well, I'm in California, and generally it's pretty darn warm here. And then I have central heat, and if you crank up the fireplace, you put on some logs, it looks great, except then the heat kicks in the house, and because it sucks air to make heat, then the smoke starts coming out of the fireplace and into the house. So modern central air and the fireplace didn't really get together too well. But we do have one that's pretty, hence my mantelpiece. And by the way, bonnets are going out in the mail. We're getting more, ordering more because it's crazy. This one's lovely. Oh, look, my hair's a mess. So, quick tour of the mantelpiece, and then I'll turn you loose because I got stuff to do here. Wait, this is like, we're taking the camera out of the thing. Hi, there you go. Look, we will gaze upon the mantelpiece with guitar, because yes, Bob has many. So here we go. Ooh, wait. So we have many incarnations of Nellie, and of course, this is the here. Hi, wait. This is the TV Land Award. What is this? TV Land, which you no doubt watch if you watch The Lost in the Prairie. TV Land, they had the TV Land Awards, and I got this. It was for it was for character most desperately in need of a timeout. Yeah, I won. Very proud. Many Casper things. Yes, this is picture here. Can we see that? Make sure you can see him. There, yes, that's my father. Davy, Casper. So yes, just stuff. That's Salvador Dali. That's a Salvador Dali painting. It's not an original. It's a print, but it's way cool. And this is, yeah. And the cat, she gave up. She got bored. Okay, the cat left. I don't know where the cat is right now. She's somewhere in the house. But thank you for doing this. Thank you for hanging out with me and my various toys and mouse ears and guitars. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll do this again tomorrow at 1:30, and I don't know what color bonnet I'll be wearing, but we'll read about Ma and Pa and Mary and Laura some more, and it'll be awesome. And wash your hands, and stay home, and stay safe.